All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Auditoria's monthly finance transformation webinar. It's Transformation Tuesday. Welcome to our Finance Transformation and Where Does AI Fit In webinar. My name is Mike Lynch. I'm Auditoria's principal for AI strategy and transformation services. Appreciate everybody making the time to be here today in August. And this is part of what we hope to be a monthly webinar series to dive deeper into some different topics along the way. We'll spend some time every month looking around the industry and seeing what's going on, but then we'll dive into some topics that affect you in the finance space as we move forward. So for today's webinar, again, some housekeeping before we do get started. We'll provide the slides to you in a PDF format after the call today, as well as the recording of today's webinar. So if you have any colleagues you want to share this with after the fact, or if you have any other information that you want to glean from here, you will have those at your disposal to be there. In addition, do encourage you to use the Q&A function throughout today's webinar. If there's anything that we can answer easily, my colleagues Brian and Nick are on the webinar as well, and they'll be answering those questions for you. If it's anything a little bit more meatier that we want to dig into a little bit, we'll definitely do that at the end of today's session. Or if it's something that we truly need to kind of dig in deep on, maybe we'll put a pin in it and I'll reach out to you individually. So we definitely want to have a free flow of information kind of both directions, but we do want to make sure we get that information out to everyone today. So we're going to spend some time, we're going to look at some industry trends, look at what's going on around in the industry and see what's important to know and what you might want to keep an eye on as we think about industry trends in the finance space. Then we're going to get strategically tactical. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but what I want you to be able to leave here with today, and our goal is for you to walk out of this webinar and then have some things that you can tackle today to move your organization strategically forward in your finance transformation journey. We'll highlight some of those manual processes that you might want to take a look at, some of the ERP-driven AI solutions that you probably have access to, but you just might not have tapped into it yet. Also, let's talk a little bit about fraud. It's a big issue, and I want to talk about how AI can help you combat that. And then the skill building. It's not so much that Terminator and Skynet and everybody else are coming to take your job away, but we want to make sure our people are skilled to be able to be ready for that future finance, that AI-driven world that we're going to be in, or we really are in the finance industry, and we want to know what's going on. I want to cover a couple of upcoming events over the next month, how you can engage with us at Auditoria. And then, as I mentioned, we'll dig in a little bit deeper into your questions and answers at the end of today's webinar. So let's take a look around the industry. So first up is AI adoption. No surprise, it is accelerating at a hockey stick pace. As new tools, new technologies, new capabilities come out seemingly every single day, it's a great opportunity for us to take advantage of that in the finance space. Now, there's some really cool stuff over in HCM land and some other areas, but in the office of the CFO, we have some really cool opportunities to take advantage of that. If we kind of turn the clock back a few years, in 2022, about 40% of organizations were taking advantage of some AI tooling or were working on AI pilots, and that was according to Gartner back then. In 2025, we're now up to 80%. And so really we've kind of doubled that count. And 60% of the companies that are out there are actually implementing AI in multiple domains within their organization. And so it's just that adoption is going faster and faster. So our view at Auditoria is not it's an if, it's more of a when and how fast you need to get there. The second thing up is that expanding role of the CFO or VP of finance or whoever leads your finance function. Gone are the days when that individual was really in charge of the P&L and L and making sure we had the FP&A ready to go and all the financial pipes were running the way they should. Now, very often CFOs are given technology, operational, HR, ops, marketing responsibilities that really expand what a CFO looks like more into COOs and chief administrative officer roles as well. And so there's a lot of additional ask of the CFOs. And so we think this is something to keep an eye on over the next few months and few years to really see what that looks like. Because as some of you in organizations think about what the role of the CFO needs to be for your forward organization, thinking about your skill sets, thinking about where you want to go to be future ready. Those are some things you want to take a look at. When we talk about other things, the CFO's responsibility is really driving that strategic insight for the organization. Now, the technology team might be out there giving you the tools or enabling the tools for you, but in many cases, it's the office of the CFO that's driving those insights forward. What are we doing with our cash flow? Where could we be going? And just to kind of paint a picture for you, if you will, many of you might be going into a board to do the presentation. You're thinking there at the 11th hour as you're preparing and you're going, oh, this is really cool, really great. And you kind of come up with this scenario in your mind of, oh, wouldn't it be great if I could paint this picture for my senior leadership team of this type of thing, if this event happens in the industry? Well, and then you call your people. And for those of you who are the people that would get called, you're having PTSD when I'm explaining this scenario because you've been there. You've gotten that call the 11th hour before the presentation, and it says, hey, could you model this for me? And it becomes a giant fire drill of let's go find the information, let's put the information together, let's try and get it in a presentable format and get it reviewed and get it ready, all at breakneck speed. Well, guess what? The office of the CFO needs to have data and analytical tools ready to be able to model those for you. And we think that there are a lot of opportunities in the AI finance transformation space for you to have those tools at your fingertips so it doesn't become a giant go do and make work activity every time an idea pops up to say, hey, wouldn't it be great if? And we can show that information. So that's a great opportunity for you to advance the finance function forward in that space. And we talk about digital transformation initiatives, they're paramount. All of those initiatives that you're doing, whether you're calling it finance transformation, AI finance transformation, whatever you're calling it, to move those forward into that space is going to be critical to achieve the goals that you've set out at an organizational level, at a tactical level, a department level, or it's maybe aspirational in your space of it'd be great if we could do X. We want to be able to accelerate those forward to implementation. Gone are the ability to kind of sit on these things and, oh, it's a 3-year plan. We're going to move this forward. We need to accelerate these digital transformation initiatives so that we have the opportunity in the office of the CFO to be able to take advantage of these cool new tools that are available to us. Just to give you an example of where the leadership wants to be now versus where we are now, is that Gartner survey also indicated about 86% of CFOs that they interviewed in this year's survey wanted to be at a real-time close. So again, that's really basically continuous net close. It's just always closing the books. And guess when they wanted to be done with that initiative? You guessed it, the end of 2025. Now, I'm sure if we polled our audience, not everybody in the audience is at a 0-day close, or 86% of you are definitely not at a 0-day close. And so, how do we get there? How do we get on that path? How do we move faster in that space? So there's a great opportunity to talk about it. Now, there's a fifth item, and I didn't put it on the list here, but I want to make sure we mention it. And that is ESG, environment, social, and governance. Now, I didn't put it on here because it's a charged word at this point. It kind of became politicized this year for a number of different reasons. But when we think about ESG, many of you in finance organizations or many of you who are international organizations still have ESG on your roadmap. You still have obligations to look at these controls and ensure that you are moving forward in that space. And when we think about ethical and responsible artificial intelligence tools, ESG comes right along part and parcel with what we're doing. So there's an opportunity to continue to move that forward in that space, but maybe just not be as overt about it. So like I did here, you make it kind of disappear. Or the term I've seen folks use is green hushing. And we're going to kind of make it quiet about what we're doing in the ESG space. So again, that's just kind of what we see around the industry, what's going on now. And we'll talk about that kind of every month as we move forward. Next, let's take a look at some manual finance processes. And again, you don't have to get done with this webinar and go do all of these, but start taking a look at some of them. When you think about that finance transformation, how do you move the ball forward strategically as quickly as possible? So some of the first things, and here at Auditoria, we have a soft spot in our heart for invoice processing and that data entry that goes along with it. But this is a great opportunity to think about what are the tools and what are the things that my teams are doing in a manual fashion today that could be streamlined, automated, or completely or kind of in a collaborative mode to be able to bring those forward to more of a digital transformation space. How much time does it take my individuals to process an invoice on a regular basis? We've seen some teams talk about as many as multiple hours to process an invoice, which if you multiply that by the number of invoices that you have, you realize these people are at full capacity just processing invoices. And my guess is, as finance leaders, you want them to be doing more than just processing an invoice. So look at those processes and procedures that are out there today. Now, we'll talk about some of the ERP tools that might be available to you. But we here at Auditoria also have an idea about how to make that better. And we'd be happy to talk to you about where we go into that space to try and make those finance processes better. The second one is expense report review and approval. Now, I'm not saying don't review and approve expense reports or just automatically approve everything, because that then doesn't allow you to audit and check things. But think about your processes today. Think about what you could potentially change the dial on your expense report approval. For example, is there a particular spend category that you don't really care about? Or is there a particular spend category that you always care about and maybe the other ones we don't care about? Or dollar thresholds? Are there some knobs and dials that you can use to try and make that easier so that your team isn't spending as much time doing expense report and approval? The next one is customer service emails. Now, we all know in 2025 that multitasking is the biggest farce we ever decided to move forward with. And we realize that we're not good at doing multiple things at the same time. When we try to do that, we do all of the things poorly. And so when you think about customer service emails, it's important to get back to your customers. They're the lifeblood of your organization. But when your teams are in the middle of a task, they see that email, they stop their task, go engage with the email, read the email, try and understand the intent of the email, go research information in that email, respond back to the email, then everything's good there. And then they try and re-engage on that task. There's a tremendous time sink that occurs during that process. And for them to re-engage in that task, depending on which study you look at, it can be as many as up to 20, 25 minutes to truly re-engage on the task, that higher value task they were working on. So are there ways you can automate that? Think about how you triage those items. Is there ways to create some FAQs, some auto FAQs, some chat bots? There's some other tools that are out there. Again, we have some philosophies on that here at Auditoria, but again, opportunities there to make that email triage better. The fourth one I have here is manual inventory reconciliation. Now, this may not apply to all of you, but if you're dealing with if inventory, your procurement teams, your treasury teams might have physical assets or securities that they're dealing from an inventory standpoint, or you're dealing with warehouses full of things if you're in a supply chain space. How can I automate that process? If finance is a responsible parties there, but in many cases they kind of have some flavor of procurement being a responsible party in that space. What can I do to make that process better? How can I think about maybe putting risk-based controls in place instead of manual reconciliation every single time? So again, some opportunities there to make that a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient in that space. The last one is employee paperwork. Now, again, we're not talking about the HCM side of things where some of that paperwork is mandated by federal law, for example, to ensure you validated identity documents to allow them to work. But when we talk about access to systems, are there manual things that are occurring today that you could streamline, perhaps taking a physical form and automating it into an online form? Or can we talk about when we entitle somebody into our systems, giving them birthright access, if you will, to particular systems in the ecosystem of what you work on? How can I streamline that process? So this is a great opportunity to work hand in hand with your technology teams to make that better. Thinking about some of those old SOX controls and financial controls that we have, how can we make that easier on us to be able to facilitate those reviews and get those reportings done as we need to today? So again, just some other opportunities to think about that as we move forward. Now, Many of you are on a cloud-based ERP system. Some of you are in the process of likely putting one in place. But your ERP solutions have opportunities to allow you to think about some of these AI solutions today. Now, some of it may be in SKUs or different tools that you may not have access to or you may not have bought yet. But in many cases, you likely have some dormant technology or some dormant capability in the ERP you've already implemented and you haven't turned it on yet. So with some simple turn it on, do a little configuration, a little testing, there are some solutions in your ERP that you can likely accelerate your digital transformation journey today. So one is in that predictive forecasting space. So instead of dealing with everything manually, kind of crunching the numbers, uh, we've seen where people will then take what's in the ERP system, and it hurts me, it pains me in the heart to say, they take it out of the ERP system and their good old friend Excel, and they do some Excel magic with it, and then they come back and try and bring that information forward as far as how they're forecasting. There are some better forecasting tools in the ERP systems that are out there. So Oracle's got them, Coupa's got them, Workday's got them. Take a look at those tools that are out there. Whether you're talking about IPM in Oracle or you're looking at adaptive planning in Workday space. So great opportunities to think about those predictive forecasting models, which are going to leverage AI and machine learning to look at your data, look at benchmarks, and accelerate your predictive modeling going forward. The second is anomaly detection features. Now, many of you who are on this webinar today likely grew up in the old school way of doing things. You guys are great at looking at information. You're great at turning over the rock and looking under the next rock and the next rock and the next rock, finding the needle in the proverbial needle stack, if you will. And you do a great job at finding that. But is that a waste of time? Do you have an opportunity to move faster in that space? And so utilizing some of the anomaly detection features in your ERPs are great, whether it's on your GL, whether it's on your spend category management system. There's some great opportunities to turn those on, let the models train on your data, and then start gleaning the insights from your tool instead of having to do it manually. So again, those are easy ways to kind of accelerate forward. So really encourage you to consider those after you leave here today. The next is workflow automation. Now, we all configure our workflows within the, excuse me, within our ERP system, and how do we drive that forward? And so, and then it's a great opportunity to think about how do we automate those workflows in that space. And so, look at those workflow automations, look at how those BPs are set up in your systems, and be able to move that forward. The next is natural language reporting. And we have some poll questions coming at the end of this slide. So just kind of hang tight a second. It'll be interesting to hear some feedback from all of you. So natural language reporting on is another one that I think the ERPs are starting to get really good at. If you've ever looked at the data layer behind some of the ERP systems and you try and figure out how to do the reporting, it can be a little bit of a struggle because that data layer doesn't necessarily make sense to a lot of folks, and it doesn't feel kind of businessy in that sense, or it's not what I'm expecting to see kind of debits and credits and see how that part models forward. And so being able to use natural language in the modeling space, it's a great opportunity to say, you know what, give me an analytic or give me a chart that shows me this, that, and the other. You can kind of express it in your natural language, and the system can now understand it and be able to report back to you in that way. And so very similar in how we engage with our AI, our generative AI tools, our assistants out there, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT or others, it's very much that natural language way of speaking. And so now the ERPs are starting to deliver that as part of their built-in reporting and analytics solutions. So again, a great opportunity there. And the last one, and again, you all may not have responsibility to it, but when we talk about supplier risk scoring and supplier classification and really supplier management writ large, this is one of those areas that I think many of us let go by the wayside a little bit. When we're busy processing invoices, we're busy processing billing and dunning and all of this other stuff. We're handling all of these things that occur from an operational standpoint. What we don't do is the proper level of care and feeding for our supplier base. And so thinking about how we risk rate our suppliers, how we classify our suppliers, how we manage thinking about pricing with our suppliers, that's probably an area that is significantly underserved. And so we think it's a great opportunity within your ERP to leverage some of those risk, look at some of those risk opportunities, and then at least while we don't have as much time to devote to our supplier relationship management, this is an opportunity for us to say, okay, at least the ones that my ERP is serving up as higher risk, maybe I need to do some additional due diligence there. And so at least it helps us amplify the small amount of time that we do have. And then as we automate these other areas, we can then take that a little bit further kind of in that space. So supplier risk scoring is a kind of a really important one there. So I mentioned a couple of polls, and I kind of I blew past where I wanted to do one of the polls. So we got a couple of poll questions for you, and so Brian's going to go ahead and launch out a poll for you. Our survey question one is really when we think about finance transformation and we think about where we're at right now. Where is it that you feel your organization is along that journey? Many people are probably not in the not started space, but a lot of people are still trying to figure it out. They've been told they need to quote do AI, and they're not sure where to start. Where do we go from there? So we'll give everybody a few more moments to kind of plan through that, and kind of answer the question to think about where you are in your particular journey at the organization. So give it just a few more moments. So it looks like we're, we're by far about half of us are kind of in the early planning stage. It looks like we'll give just another couple moments. Some of us are pilots in progress, and some are fully underway, which is awesome. So we'll go ahead and share that out. So Brian can kind of share out the results to everybody, so you can see those. So again, thankfully, everybody who's here at least has started. We've done something, which is good. And even being on this webinar is a start. You really need to, kind of start to figure out where to go. And that's one of the things we hope to do is to help eliminate some of the noise out there and all the things you could do, try and boil the ocean in transformation space to try and get down to some tactical things. So good to see that at least about half of you are in that early stage, and then everybody else is kind of moving forward in that space. So, oh, very good. So we'll go ahead and stop sharing the information on that particular poll. And then as we think about this, as we think about our polls in that space, we also have a second question around when we think about kind of what you're doing, and thinking about those manual processes. So the last two slides we talk about manual processes and then how we might be able to automate that from the ERP standpoint. So where are you at today? If you kind of, again, not that you have an exact number of what percentage of your finance time is spent on manual repetitive work, but just kind of rough order of magnitude. This is where we're seeing, still one of the things just to kind of tell you a slight anecdote, one of the things we wanted to make sure why we doing the transformation webinars on the third Tuesday of the month is because we didn't want to do it on the fourth Tuesday because some of you cheat and start your month-end close early. And we didn't want it to be in the beginning of the month because some of you take a little while to get your close done at the end of the month. And so realizing full well that a lot of people are still very heavily in that manual space. So the survey question now, again, just talks about the percentage of time spent on manual repetitive work. So, yep, it's just seeing a lot of people, more than half of you are kind of in that large 51 to 75% space. So give you another few moments to answer that question. All right, a couple of answers coming in there. All right. Some of you are rapidly scribbling notes. You forgot that I told you we're going to give you the recording at the end of this thing. So you have the opportunity there. So, all right, we'll go ahead and kind of stop the poll there and share the results out with you. So as you can see, if you feel like you're alone in the fact that your organization does a ton of manual work, well, fear not, my friends. 92% of you feel like greater than 50% of your time is spent on manual repetitive work. And that's some places we need to work on together to be able to make that move forward. So thank you for your participation in that. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the poll results and kind of move that out of our way, and we'll move on to kind of the next space in our journey here today. So let's talk about fraudulent payments. Now, this isn't the most sexy of topics, if you will, but this is one that is going to be expensive if we don't pay attention to it. I know a number of you that have registered for today's webinar are parts of banks and other organizations. And it's critical to ensure, some of you are larger firms that have a lot of remittances back and forth, both paying and receiving. It's critical to ensure that your money is going where you intend it to go and to the right suppliers, and it's getting credited accordingly. Business email compromise, fraudulent invoicing, it continues to be a huge problem. As you see here, 79% of organizations report at least one attempt at fraud in their organizations, with many of them having multiple attempts throughout the year, especially as you see the companies get bigger and bigger, the fraud attempts get more voluminous as you go on. Business email compromise still is a huge one, and I'll actually tell you a brief story about that here in a moment. And those invoice fraud attempts, that 24%, again, that's an opportunity to think about, how am I looking at my invoices that come in? How am I ensuring that I'm paying the right supplier? And we can talk about that. Let's talk about kind of how we can help you make that better. When you talk about recovery's a shaky game at best. 20% get nothing, only about 70% get up to about 50%. But it's pretty bad. Most likely you're not going to get it. And you can see just the numbers are staggering and they continue to be staggering. Over globally, when you talk about systems that are checking fraud and tracking against it, it's estimated that about $1.3 trillion worth of transactions are flagged for review on an annual basis. So it's just a voluminous problem that's not going away. So I'd tell you a brief story. Literally yesterday, so I met up with a friend of mine, who's a CTO at a small not-for-profit organization. His CEO was traveling over the past couple of weeks. And all of a sudden, the head of AP gets an email from the CEO that says, I need you to send $45,000 to this particular supplier. Well, thankfully, the AP person was intrepid enough to ask the CEO directly, hey, are you sure you want to make this payment to this particular supplier? And the CEO said, oh, no, that's not me. I have no idea what was happening. And so clearly the email was compromised. Well, to make matters worse, the CFO of the organization had actually just resigned to pursue another opportunity. So when you talk about the human layers of checks and balances that occur under a normal circumstance like this, you now got into a situation where one of those checks and balances doesn't even work for the organization anymore. And so if the AP person had just said, oh, the boss said pay this money and had paid it out, that $45,000 would have been gone. Now, don't get me wrong, for some of you, $45,000 isn't a lot of money, but for all of us in finance, well, I still got to explain the variance when that $45,000 goes missing. For some of us, $45,000 in our organization is a huge amount of money. But any dollar amount lost to something like that is preventable, or at least we can try and get better at it. Over 90% of the banks in the United States are using AI to combat fraud in that particular instance. So, thankfully, you might have intrepid people who are going to raise their hands and ask the questions, like my friend's AI or AP person did. But in many cases, if the boss says go pay this bill, they're just going to go pay that bill. And then by the time you realize that payment went to the wrong place, that money has moved five, six, seven times, or might even be back out of the financial system by that point in time. And so it's really critical to think about what can I do to automate this fraud check process, whether I'm paying bills or looking at my incoming information, or banks that are using it for looking at anomalies in my journaling or other things that are out there. You have a lot of opportunities in the finance transformation space and tools that are out there to help you get better. So really encourage you to think about that in that space. Well, now we get into the people part of it, right? And no AI tool is as good as an opportunity to think about how is the talent going to use those particular AI tools. Now, there's a quotation, somebody had said, well, is AI going to come take my job? Well, no, AI is not coming to take your job, but somebody who uses AI might come and take your job. And so let's upskill our people. The battle for retention for talent right now, we could have put this on when we talk about the industry trends right now. A lot of things, the journal had an article today about what they call job hugging, where they're kind of, people are holding on to those jobs for dear life. And so the mobility between jobs now isn't there. And so when we talk about the fight for finance talent, it's tough. It's tough for us to find good finance talent. And so we need to make sure our people are upskilling to be ready for this future of finance. And so we want to make sure we're ready for the challenges of tomorrow. So data literacy, interpretation, and I would even say along with that, looking at opportunities to upskill your folks with kind of that ethical AI and bias awareness. You can't just accept AI at face value and assume that what it's giving you is verbatim and it's good and it's great. You need to make sure you have a skeptical mind to be able to kind of check that. Does it pass the sniff test? Does it pass your sanity test? So there's a great opportunity there. Prompt engineering. AI is a great example of garbage in, garbage out. If you feed garbage in on the prompt end, you're not going to get the analytics and the insights you're looking for on the back end of this. And so you need to be good at telling your AI models what you want out of it so that those models can go find the data, bring it back, and bring that forward. Now, the other thing as part of that data literacy and interpretation is also making sure your data is in a good space to be able to be used for AI. And this is an organizational kind of how do we upskill them to be aware of how to get data ready, but also how do we move forward in that data space to ensure that we're governing our data properly so that we don't get messy on the back end and then our AI and ML models stop working. Process documentation and optimization is critical at this point. If I'm using AI tools in my day-to-day finance roles, what am I doing when AI gives me something that's questionable? What am I doing? How am I checking the checkers, if you will, as you move through that process? And then change management and adaptability. Really, when we talk about kind of neuroplasticity and flexibility of individuals, how do we move that forward? So there's great opportunities to go and find. There's some reduced price and free tools that are out there. In many cases, if you look at your ERP solutions, they have something out there. There's also some areas that have kind of free areas. AWS has a great opportunity to go out and learn some basics about AI and ML that are out there. If your organizations have access to LinkedIn Learning, Masterclass, Data Camp, some of the other ones that are out there, there are great opportunities to go out there and just learn. And so those allow those people to start upskilling. Now, you can also start to look at advanced kind of data analytics certifications and some others that are out there. So as you may start to develop some citizen data scientists within your organization, there are some additional ways that you can get those folks upskilled and ready for those futures of finance. Again, really encourage you to take a look out there. Be honest with you, when you get done and you're looking for where do I go to find a class on data literacy and interpretation? Well, go over to your friendly AI assistant, your Chat GPT, I call him Chad, or Claude, and you can go query. So where would I go to find courses on X? And it'll come back with a lot of information for you and links to go find it. So you don't have to do the hard research. It can actually do some of the research for you. Coursera, Udemy, all those groups are really great at providing some opportunities to give you tools to be able to upskill your talent in that space. Again, we upskill our talent, we show that we're investing in them, and it makes them stickier for us. And so when we think about how our office of the CFO continues to move forward in this future of finance, we want to make our people happy and content. And when you invest in your people and they feel like you see them and you invest in them and you are invested in their success, that's going to make them more loyal to your organization. Again, it's not a panacea. It's not guaranteed that they're never going to walk away, but it's a greater opportunity for you to retain that good talent that has your industrial, your corporate institutional knowledge as well. Don't forget, they're going to be able to stay within your organization. So it's a great opportunity to kind of upskill your folks there. It's again, you need to have your people ready to make that pivot to the new world when we talk about the future of finance. So some upcoming events where you can engage with Auditoria over the next month or so. So you're at the Transformation Tuesday webinar right now. We will have another one next month. And so we'll get information out about the topics that we're going to cover there and get that out to you. Again, share it with a friend and bring them along with you. We're going to talk about different topics every month. So we're not lather, rinse, repeat. We're not running back the same webinar every month. So we want to dive into some deeper into different topics each month. So this first one, we're kind of covering a few different areas all at once. We're going to dive deeper into some of those areas and into some further areas as well, and to get some more information to you. If you're coming out to Workday Rising in San Francisco, which is happening in just about a month from now, we are going to be there. We'll be out at booth C20. We also have a couple of sessions that are happening at Rising. You can see Nick, Mark, and Rohit are doing a session. Excuse me, Nick is actually doing a session, then Mark and Rohit are doing a session. So there's a couple of different opportunities for you to see us there. Come by, see us at the booth. Come by and see yours truly at the Brain Dates at Rising. So we're happy to do that. The last thing we're redoing is we also have some, we've been doing some CFO Corner podcasts over the past few years. They're on our website. We encourage you to take a peek at those. So it's really thinking about where we're going over the future of finance. We are rejuvenating and restarting that CFO Corner podcast group back up. We're starting to record some of those sessions with folks. I know some of you on today's call are CFOs. We'd be happy to engage with you and start to hear your insights, where you're going, what you see from your seat in the Office of Finance. And even those folks who are finance leaders, we'd love to talk to you about where you see it going, kind of in your space as well. So reach out and let's talk about the CFO Corner podcast as well. If anything that we talked about today resonates with you, let's dig in more on that. It's worth a conversation to see where you are. Again, with over 90% of you dealing with manual processes and where you're going in that space, it's a great opportunity to really kind of dig in and get further down in that space. So let's dig in more on those, on what we're doing. Our finance transformation practice, we're focused on the Office of CFO. How do we accelerate your digital transformation journey? How do we look at implementing AI in the space for the Office of the CFO? And that's what we do. We focus in on the finance area alone, readiness, change management, and make sure that your roadmap and your strategy is all planned out. So give me a call, give me an email, shoot me an email. We're happy to re-engage on this topic around your finance transformation, and we really hope you be part of that journey. One last poll question we'll kind of roll out for you here. So have Brian go ahead and share that. So how do you feel, right? How do you feel today about your AI adoption in finance? So based on your organization, kind of where you're at in that space, how do you feel? This is one too, because many of you have been practitioners for, in some cases, decades. I know I've been in the space for 20 plus years. Where do you feel about that? And it's kind of, this is a new thing. It's I'm sure some people who are riding horses looked at the car in some very much the same way, saying, no, that's not going to work for me. Or the people who are, working in paper and they saw these PCs start to show up on desks and they're like, no, that's not for me. So I think some people are a little bit weary about where it goes. But we are excited about the future. It is not a choice, as I mentioned earlier. It's not a question of if, but really more of a question of when and how fast. And so it's great to kind of see some of you answering there. So I'll give you another couple moments to answer that question. Probably about the amount we're going to get. So we can go ahead and share out that information to everybody. And so again, about a quarter of you are excited, fully embracing it, which is awesome. You're kind of like, yeah, bring it on. We're going to figure this thing out. We're going to be able to move it forward, and we're great. The optimistic but cautious space is a good spot to be. There's value here. There's opportunities to make things better, and that's a great spot to be. But you're cautious. You're cautious about your data. You're cautious about where it goes, and that's cool. And that's where you should be, because you should be good stewards of your organization's information. Some of you you're curious. You're not sure it's going to be a thing. And then the risks and disruption, it's absolutely going to be just that. It's going to be disruptive. And part of what we can do is we can talk about how to make that disruption less disruptive for your people, how to get them to understand the value of what they're doing and why it makes sense, and that we're not automating them out of jobs. We want to be able to upskill them to take on more higher order tasks where it makes sense. So there's some great opportunities. I think AP leaders, AR leaders, and others are now able to start asking some questions around, what would I do if I had more bandwidth with my team? It's a question they've never been able to ask before because they didn't have the tools to automate some of the drudgery that they were working on. And so now it's like, well, how do we make that better? And we'd love to engage in that conversation with you. So again, thanks, Brian, for sharing that out. We'll go ahead and stop sharing there. Again, thank you all for attending today's webinar. If there's any other question, let me go ahead and check on the questions here that we have here in the space. So So a couple of questions that came in. So just to share out with you. So what if we want to keep a human in the loop? Is that possible? So the HITL, you'll see it sometimes referred to as abbreviated as that. But human in the loop is when we talk about AI, but it's not just like run amok. It's not off on its own, just running off and doing its own thing. We believe that humans are the ultimate, you have the ultimate decision-making authority for what you're doing. And so if you talk about human in the loop, it's a great opportunity to think about how do I run my AI in either in a collaborative mode where the AI will do some of the tasks, do some of the research, and then tee up information for my people to go, yeah, that's good. I'm good with that. Go ahead and submit that forward. And so responsible AI and ethical AI should have the human in the loop to be able to check it. Now, once you get comfortable with some of those AI tools, then you can turn those into more of an autonomous opportunity where it's only surfacing the anomalies that pop up. But again, that's where those anomalies, the anomaly detections we talked about, ERP systems and others, are some great opportunities to be able to drive those forward. So that's a great opportunity to do that. And we think that yeah, human in the loop should be possible if that's what you want as a strategy for your team, especially as you get comfortable with those tools. You should absolutely have a human in the loop and an opportunity to do that as well. Another question about ROI for an AI project. Well, that's a great one to dig in on because you can measure ROI for your AI projects in a number of different ways. Some people might be truly looking for, a dollar savings on something. Well, when you talk about what does an AI tool or solution cost you to implement, right? So there's your cost. But then we need to measure that against what does the current state cost me? For example, I have to deal with this particular remittance and this particular information. Well, how much time does that take me? Times X dollars an hour is what I'm paying these people is a real cost, right? What is that real cost going to give you? Well, you can then you can look at those tools as and those two costs side by side, and then say, okay, if I implement this solution, I can save this cost. But then you get to think about how you want to realize that cost savings. Do you want to realize that in extra productivity because you want to then pivot and be able to look at what can those people do to in addition above and beyond the work that they're doing today, or is it something where maybe I am trying to realize actual costs and maybe I don't need, this particular accountant role, a lower level junior accountant. I'd rather bring on kind of a lower level kind of junior data scientist type person to help me make my product better. And so you may think about redeploying talent in a certain different way. So your ROI may be measured and you may have an opportunity to look at it different ways, but it's an option to you of how you want to kind of drive that forward. Another question that came through, why can't I just outsource my accounting functions or hire bookkeepers? Well, you can, but here's the thing. If you outsource that function to go now, some of you are, smaller companies, and you may outsource part of your function, and that's okay. But keep in mind, if you start outsourcing those functions or just hiring endless bookkeepers or other folks that are there, at some point that doesn't scale. When you talk about the scalability of an AI tool or an AI agent or a chat bot, if you will, or a bot or an agent, not necessarily a chat bot, but when you look at those, the scalability of those tools, they can do hundreds of things and hundreds and or thousands of things in some instances faster than a person can do one thing. And so when, just your efficiencies of scale, it is way cheaper to ultimately get into an agentic AI solution to be able to automate these processes than just doing it. The other thing you have is if you deal with more people, you deal with more manual opportunities for errors. You deal with more manual opportunities for that business email compromise I just talked about, where somebody's sending in an email for fraudulent payment. Again, you want to try and limit those opportunities for additional challenges for your organization, and scaling the number of people just to do the same task starts to get a little bit heavy as far as that goes there. And we talked a little bit about skills in the AI first workforce. Again, thinking people who are eager, who are interested, who are curious. You can't teach curiosity. It's an opportunity for you to think about your people who are there. So again, when you leave here and you think about the staff at your organization and who out there is curious, who's interested in doing something different, who's interested in doing something more. Those are some people to kind of say, hey, let me show you my friend AI over here, and let's get you interested over here, because then they are going to be able to make those connections, draw those connections between different parts of your organization that could also benefit from those AI solutions. They kind of become your transformation champions out there within your organization. So again, thank you all very much for your time this afternoon. Happy to stick around if anybody has any more questions to throw into the chat. Otherwise, hope you have a great afternoon. Good luck on your AI transformation journey and reach out to us, and we're happy to continue the conversation. Thank you very much.